Hello, good evening. My name is Erin Tillery. I am a senior in the Nonprofit Leadership Studies program. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the second evening of the first annual Philanthropy Week, hosted by the Nonprofit Resource Center, the Nonprofit Leadership Studies program, the Department of Organizational Communication and Leadership, and the Arthur Bonnerfein College of Business and Murray State University. Philanthropy Week is a celebration of generosity, philanthropy, and civic engagement. The giving of time, talent, and treasures by the citizens of Murray-Calloway County and by the students of Murray State University make this a wonderful community in which to live and thrive. The Nonprofit Resource Center strives to recognize and advance the historical partnerships among the public, nonprofit, and business sectors. Murray and Calloway County and Murray State University continue to play an integral role in creating and sustaining these partnerships, which will help ensure our community continues to achieve its highest potential. Tonight, I am honored to introduce and welcome to you Mr. Tony Watkins, CEO of the Community Foundation in West Kentucky, and Mr. Harold Hurt, Board Chairperson of the Murray-Calloway County Foundation. I would also like to introduce and thank Dr. Bob Long, Interim Director of the Nonprofit Leadership Studies program at Murray State. Dr. Long will facilitate the discussion, the roles of community foundations, a conversation with Tony Watkins, Community Foundation of West Kentucky, and Harold Hurt, Murray-Calloway County Community Foundation. Gentlemen, thank you for taking this time to be here with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Erin. We're all really proud of you and excited about your graduation in a month, and look forward to paying close attention to your career in the years ahead. You're a true leader for our nonprofit program, and I'm very proud of you. I spent the first 15 years of my career as a grant seeker working in small nonprofit organizations, and then the next 16 years in a grant-making organization supporting small nonprofits, particularly in rural parts of the United States and other countries around the world. And I retired the first time to come to Murray State in 2008. And upon my arrival, two of the first people that welcomed me are with me tonight. And I'm really excited about the chance to chat with Tony Watkins and Harold Hurt. We're going to talk a little bit about what a community foundation really is. And I've always seen them as bright lights, even in the darkest of times. And this current year is a great example of how a community foundation continues to make a positive impact on the quality of our lives, even when we don't know that it's happening. Of all the things I learned about community foundations, one of the most powerful is the frame of reference that it is not a zero-sum game when it comes to raising money. We're talking about different money. And ultimately, a donation to a community foundation goes into an endowment, and the principal is not spent. It sits in an account and grows through wise investments, and the revenue it produces continues to go out to the cause or causes that the donors intended to impact. So it has that way of having a lasting long-term effect on the quality of life in a community. And a great example sitting here at Murray State University is that many community foundation funds are focused on scholarships. And ultimately, students come to Murray State University on a scholarship from a community foundation fund, and their tuition and fees, and sometimes more, is supported directly through a community foundation. And I don't think most people know that. So, Tony, I'd like to start with you and talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what do people need to know? What is a community foundation?
Well, I think one of the best ways to describe it is, first of all, community foundations have been around for a long time. They're not a new entity into the community. It actually started back in 1914, and with the Cleveland Foundation, with a gentleman, his last name was Goff, who was a banker. He worked in the trust department of a bank, and he had all these bequests that were on his table that he had to take care of. And so he wanted to disperse those back into the community. So he came up with this plan, a community foundation type of concept. And he started dispersing those funds back into the community. And soon he saw that that was very beneficial to the local community. And you might think about, well, that long ago, over 100 years ago. I mean, why are we just now hearing about community foundations? Well, it really was kind of like the community chest. That was really what was referred to back then. And you might think of United Way today. United Way focuses on operating expenses in your local community for nonprofits. Taking care of the gas bill, the electric bill, and things like those. Those expenses that are there every month on a reoccurring basis. Community foundations really don't look for that. The way I describe it to people who come to us for the first time, I say, you look at the United Way, because we're not trying to duplicate the efforts. We're not in competition with them. We're in cooperation with them, if you want to look at it that way. You look at the United Way as kind of like your checking account. You write those bills every month out of that account. It dwindles down. You replenish it when you get your paycheck. The community foundation is more like your savings account. You know, you put your extra money in there. You built it up over time. And only when there's special projects you need to have extra funds for, that's what the community foundation is. Like you just explained a while ago, your endowment money. You don't ever get into your seed corn, so to speak. You only take the earnings off of it. The other thing about a community foundation is they're not everywhere. There's only about 730 of them in the United States, 1,500 around the world. We're very focused on geographical areas, just like the one that Harold is president of here in Murray, Callaway County. It's in a county emphasis, very county specific. The one that I run out of Paducah is for the West Kentucky, about 18 counties. We don't try to, take over the whole state and do things we're not equipped to do. We're very focused on the geographical area where we can have the largest impact. And so I think that's the biggest thing people need to understand, that we're your neighbors, we're your friends, we're right in this neighborhood with you, and we're trying to raise money to make the greatest impact on the community, but not today, but also for tomorrow.
Oh, that's great. Remind me how many affiliate funds you have and what communities they're in.
Well, we have about 300 here in Western Kentucky. Of course, we have one here in Murray and Callaway County. We have one in Marshall County that's fairly new. They're getting their board together and we have a couple of very significant funds. You might remember a couple of years ago there was a shooting over in Marshall County, and they raised a lot of money through the Marshall Strong program, through the sale of T-shirts and bracelets and things like that. For scholarships, we have all those funds that we do because we're the only community foundation around, and they knew that we could administer them very well. We have a new one over in Livingston County that we started, a very poor rural county just the other side of the river of Paducah. We have one in Henderson County, as much as affiliate about the same time Harold and them started. They started theirs up there. They're doing quite well. We have one in Glasgow, halfway across the state, they asked us to affiliate with us. They looked at the Community Foundation of Louisville at first to affiliate much closer, much larger than we are. Philosophies were different. Not that Louisville's doing anything wrong, just a different philosophy. And they said, no, we want to affiliate with you. And we're getting ready to start one in Union County, closer to Henderson. Henderson would really like them to be underneath their wings a little bit, but an affiliate cannot have an affiliate, so we're going to let them be their own affiliate when they get ready to do that. And I want to start one in the Four Rivers counties. I really want to start one for those four river counties. I don't think any of those individual counties are strong enough on their own to have their own affiliate, so I'd like to bond them together if I could. There's a new river port coming in to the Wickliffe area. That's the first. I'm a product of the Four River counties. It's the first time I've seen those four counties kind of band together in a collective project, and I'm hoping that that's going to be kind of the glue that holds them all together, and we might be able to start, an affiliate down there. So we've got about 300 funds, those 6 affiliates that are working right now, about at $40 million in assets. Not too bad from starting with 3 $100 donations from the local banks, and surviving COVID. As I told my 360 event people just about 2 weeks ago, when people tell you can't raise money in a pandemic environment, we raised over $5 million last year in a pandemic environment. So don't say that's a myth if they say you can't raise money when there's the COVID's going on. you just can't shy away from what's standing there in front of you. In a crisis, people give a lot of money. The tsunamis, earthquakes, 9/11. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of money that's changing hands. You just got to position yourself, and as you teach and I teach in our little seminars that we do, you got to follow your mission, because money will follow your mission, and you've got to teach these nonprofits how to do that.
The enthusiasm that I've always heard in your voice reminds me of the first time we met, and a commitment to the region was clear in how Tony approached engaging me. And I'm from 5 miles off the hard road on a little subsistence farm, so I understand that passion. And Harold, it makes sense to me that the affiliates are all in rural areas. What they have in common and why Glasgow was attracted to this particular community foundation was because they felt more in common than they did with urban areas. Could you describe a little bit about the Murray-Callaway County Community Foundation and how it fits into this narrative?
Well, the Murray-Callaway County Community Foundation was actually, we got started in 2011 with help from you and certainly with help from Tony. And our goal is to help our nonprofits set up endowments, which Tony referred to as savings accounts. And from these endowments, then, none of the original gifts to the endowments are spent. But as we go forward each year, then the earnings from those endowments, part of that goes back to the nonprofit. So they can, in effect, put that in their budget if they want to, if they see fit to, or they have the option of reinvesting it. And many of ours are reinvesting. They now see that by investments that the money is growing. And so endowments for our nonprofits that we started since 2011 are all we're looking out 50, 100 years. We're not, I feel sort of like Johnny Appleseed. I'm planting trees, but I'm never going to see any fruit. So that's sort of the way we're approaching these endowments. And when we started with a $10,000 gift that my wife and I made just to get this thing off the ground. And so in the 10 years we've been around, we're now at $3.4 million and of endowments for nonprofits that serve Murray and Callaway County. Some of those, we have some that are set up for scholarships. We had a soldier that was graduated from Callaway County High School that got killed in Afghanistan. And so his classmates, actually they contacted Tony first wanting to set up an endowment in his memory. And so that we got that started, and it's got, I guess, around $40,000 in it. So each year they give out 3-4 scholarships for students that graduate from Callaway County High School. So we now have about 30 endowments. And we also have endowments that donors set up as well as, and they can go ahead and designate the nonprofit that they want their endowment to help, or they can retain it as sort of a donor-advised endowment. That's what my wife and I have, where each year we get to select what nonprofit in Callaway County that we want to make the contribution for that year. And then when we're gone, our daughter will step into our place and select. And when she's gone, our grandsons will step in. So it's a way you perpetuate your family helping the nonprofits of Murray and Callaway County for generations and generations and generations into the future.
Too often, I thought of foundations, long before I got involved with them, as places where rich people put their money. And talk a little bit about what it takes to set up a fund, that it isn't just about rich people.
No, it's not. In fact, that's the exception rather than the rule. To set up an endowment at this point in time, it requires $10,000. We had a donor that gave us some money where we can actually help a nonprofit by giving them a $2,500 of their $10,000 to get them started. But the alumni from Callaway County High School wanted to set up and down for scholarships again for graduates. So they contacted their all the classmates, different classes, and they raised up around $15,000 to get their endowment started. And then I was sitting in my office in December, right at 30th, about maybe 3 years ago, and I got a call, and it was a donor that graduated from Callaway County High School, said, my wife and I would like to make a contribution to the alumni endowment of $50,000, but we got to do it before the end of the year. And I said, well, come right on down to my office, and we took care of that. So it started out with $25 and $30, $50 contributions from classmates to get up to the 15 to get it going. And then out of the clear blue sky, they got the $50,000. So now their fund is up close to $70,000. And so each year they're able to award more scholarships. So most of our endowments, the nonprofits themselves, they know who their supporters are. And if they give them the message that, hey, we're setting up an endowment, and we're not going to spend this money now for operations, this is for the future, would you contribute it to it? And they find that a lot of their donors then will give money to that endowment that they would not give to them to spend for operations, and they may come in $500, $100, $50 till they get up to the $10,000. Then after that, anybody can contribute whatever they want to.
Yeah, the math has always been really impressive with what a regional community foundation can offer to a smaller community. You said $40 million in the endowment today, the corpus.
Yeah.
So now, my math's not the best in the world, but think about this. The IRS requires that we give away about 5% annually from that endowment. And wise investments of $40 million, you can generate a lot more than 5%.
Yeah.
And, it's not unusual for it to be 8, 10, 12%. And whatever the difference is, rolls into those funds so they can grow on their own.
Sure.
I always thought of them as inflation proof.
Sure.
Because you can know that you're going to be giving away less than you're earning.
Yeah.
But then I think about all the powerful impacts that those funds are having. And I was interested in asking both of you to talk a little bit about what are some of the programs and services being supported by current endowments, where somebody came to you and said, I want this particular thing to happen. Other than scholarships, which we've talked about, what are some examples, Tony, of other kinds of impacts that funds are having?
Well, I have a couple of favorite stories I like to tell about just to show you how the impact works so well. Much like Harold, I was sitting in my office one Friday afternoon at about 4 o'clock, and the phone rang. It was a local attorney that says, and he sits on our board now, and he says, how quick can I open an endowment fund? And I said, well, how quick can you sign your name? And he said, well, I have Dr. Fowler's 2 daughters in my office, and he's in a long care facility, and his health's not doing too well, and they want to open up a fund in his name. And so I faxed one of our agreements over to him, and this was on Friday, so they went out and had Dad sign the agreement. He always wanted to leave $1 million to the community foundation. So they went out and they had him sign the agreement and brought it back to my office, slid it underneath the door. He died on Sunday. And he had an account at UBS, and we had an account at UBS. On Monday morning, they switched from his account to our account, that $1 million. The 2 daughters now, one of them is, the president of the foundation at WKCTC out there, and the other one is one of a very prominent lady in the community. Those two sisters have a ball giving money away every year, and Daddy's his name and leaving his legacy alive. They support the library, the arts. I mean, you name it, they support it. And now, like Market House Theater in Paducah, they have had a large capital campaign. Those two ladies were the primary movers and shakers in the Market House Theater, or the Columbia Theater, the renovation for it. But libraries, not only in Paducah, but over in Illinois, in their daddy's name. That just goes to show, and they didn't put a penny in there. But they get to keep their daddy's legacy alive, who was a very prominent doctor in Paducah for years and years and years. And you can just see the pride on their face when they get to do that. They get to pass those checks out and those type of things. I mean, I could tell these stories all day long, but that's the thing. The thing that people need to understand, and Harold touched on it just a while ago when he talked about the one here. The money that comes out of Murray, Callaway County, or Paducah, McCracken County, or Glasgow, it stays in those counties. I mean, it doesn't go to California, New York, or Detroit. It stays right here. It's the community people helping the community that you live in and making a difference in there. And then the fact that the money is invested, it's there in perpetuity. It's not going to run out. I mean, you look up perpetuity in the dictionary, that means forever. I mean, that's a long time. So just think of the work that's going to be done that none of us in this room today are ever going to be able to see. And the impact on the lives and the faces, that you can't see. During this pandemic, I think that brought a lot of things into focus. The food banks, the people who were being fed, the projects that we started at the Community Foundation with other partners we never partnered with before to help the waitresses and the waiters in restaurants that weren't working, or business owners to help meet their rent payments and things like that, not only in this community, but communities in Henderson and everywhere else. That little affiliate up there raised over $750,000 for local businesses just by saying, we want to help out. That's the difference that community foundations can make, because you've got people like Harold sitting on the board here in the community where everybody knows him. Everybody knows everybody who's on this board. You've got that personal touch. It's not somebody like me coming in from out of town that they consider the hired gun, so to speak. It's friends asking friends to make a difference in your community. That's the impact that community foundations have. Our mission is not like a normal nonprofit organization. That nonprofit has one mission. Ours is very broad-based. We can help education, social services, the arts, or this or whatever. So Harold and those guys here, they have to shift gears pretty quick sometimes to focus in on some of these needs in the community. And if we can ever get the the government people to focus in on that with us and partner. And they're starting to come around slowly but surely. I mean, it takes a long time to get a bureaucracy focused in on something, to say, these people, when they tell you they're going to join you and partner with you, they make a difference. They get the job done. They don't get hung up on all this other stuff. And we've seen it. I'm meeting with the new mayor in Paducah on Friday morning, Joe Frampton and I are, about what to do with the south side of Paducah, try to renovate it. Why? Because they saw the things we got involved in before. I don't like getting involved with politics. You know that. You and I have been on some things before. I don't like it. But if you want to get something done, we get involved in it and we tell them right off the bat, here's what we're going to do. Now, if you're not willing to do this, just leave us out of it. We'll still be friends, but we're not going to get involved with it because, we've got other things we want to focus on to make a difference in this community.
Well, I appreciate the dynamic, always have. And I love the example of how nimble, how quick a community foundation can move. Harold, what are a couple of examples of donor-advised funds that you've established that are doing some really interesting and creative things that our audience would enjoy hearing about here in Murray, Callaway County?
Well, we have one real good example of a man who attended a small church in Callaway County, and he wanted to do something to honor his father and mother, who were members of that church all their lives. So in December of 2011, he set up an endowment with $100,000 for this church. And then we met with the elders of the church the following year and explained to them that they had this endowment. And of course we had to explain it at least a couple of times. And at the end of it, I said, well, the good news is you can get a check for $4,000 this year. And they said, well, we need a new roof. So they got their $4,000 and they put the new roof on. As of the end of February of this year, they have taken gifts each year, and they have taken gifts totaling $38,000. Their endowment, which started at $100,000 at the end of February, was worth $148,000. So by having an endowment, it's grown, and they've gotten a yearly benefit. So now it's just a part of their yearly budget, I assume. So that's how this individual is giving back to this small church. And in his document, we provide that if in the event this church were to cease to operate for some reason, then it would go to a larger church of the same denomination serving Callaway County. In our mission, it has to be a nonprofit that serves Callaway County.
I've always enjoyed attending those events where the distributions are accepted. The checks are distributed, but people have decided, okay, we're going to take our annual distribution. We got plans for it. We need a new roof, whatever. And there's great pride in that, especially the second year and after.
Right.
Because there's almost like a disbelief that, oh, we're going to get this check again. And then they do. And they now, would you say, $38,000 of distributions later while their endowment has grown. What that story reminds me of, back to the $40 million investment fund, if we had in Murray Callaway County an investment fund of $3.4 million, our return on investment would not be nearly as high as we can generate being a part in a partnership that is a total of $40 million. So the return on investment is sort of part of the magic of the math here. It allows a fund like that to grow and to continue its distributions. Do you think of a nonprofit organization that you've seen reap the benefits of that math and annual distribution?
Well, of course, we have endowments for like Needline. A newer one we started about 2 years ago was Soup for the Soul. That one has been a lot of fun because they got out and raised enough money to where we gave them $2,500, and they got their endowment started with about $11,000, and it's now grown. They've gone out and they've had campaigns where they will get a donor to say, okay, I'll give $5,000. Now you go, if it's provided you match it. So then they can go out to small donors who can contribute to it, and then their endowment grows significantly. And so they have not taken a distribution. They want theirs to grow. They're getting enough in from their annual budget from their donors. So they're just letting that money grow. And Needline's doing the same thing. They haven't taken, I don't think, a distribution to my knowledge, Tony. Mm-hmm. No. But some of the smaller ones have and do. And they like to, they get a quarterly report showing them how much their endowment has grown, and they all look at that. And if they got any questions, I get the call. And that's good because they're interested. Their boards are interested. And so our board members, we meet with the board members of the nonprofits to explain how we can help them and work with them to try to get their endowment started and get them putting money back for the future.
How many funds do we have for Murray Callaway County?
We have approximately 40, but some of those are donor advised. But we have probably close to 30 that are for specific nonprofits, either by a donor designating them. We now have a hospice house in Murray. So one of our physicians, who's a longtime physician here, died, and he left $300,000 to set up an endowment for a hospice house. So they that's going to help them then with the disbursement. They're going to have to take their annual disbursements because to help them support the cause. But that's how our endowments will ultimately grow larger. It's through a legacy, where I've learned that a lot of people say go to a church. They want to leave money to their church, but they don't want the church to spend that money the first 30 minutes after they get it. So if they leave it in the form of endowment, and that the church is only going to get a disbursement annually, and that money that they give is going to be there in perpetuity, they really like that idea. And they like the idea then that their family will be recognized each year by their church, even after they're all dead and gone, that this is coming from the Smith family. And so legacies is where it's and why we're looking at growing. And then I know that's how Tony's grown in the past as well.
One of the areas that Harold and the people at Murray Callaway County, they've taken real advantage of the Endow Kentucky tax credit. You know, back when we first got this thing started, back when we first met early on, the first year that we had the tax credit was not even a full year. It was a little half of a year kind of. And then Harold and his bunch, they jumped right on it, and he had some donors that took advantage of it and actually got advantage of the 2011, 2012 within a couple of months of each other. But every year, that first year, Harold and his bunch were in the top, had almost a third of the tax credits for the whole state there for a while. They were just blowing and going. And every year they're doing a good fair share of the tax credits that we're doing that can only be run through a community foundation. And they do that every year. They're surpassing Henderson. They had a large chunk that one year when they got started up there, but they haven't done anything since then. But Harold and them are like the rabbit and the hare in the race. They're just very steady about what they do every year. And those people now have got used to taking advantage of the tax credit, which that goes right into it has to go into an endowment fund. That's the only way you can take advantage of the tax credit. And so those things have been growing, annually through those contributions to those endowments. Plus, the growth of our investment funds have been, 2 years ago was 18%. Last year's 14%. I don't know what it's going to be, but that's pretty good return on your investments. And like you said, we're only, giving out 4% annually. So the 8 to 10% is rolling back into the corpus of that fund. So they grow exponentially. And so you see these people that are not used to, they're used to seeing CD rates of less than 1%, and they're all of a sudden getting 18%. They're saying, they think they hit the lottery, and all of a sudden this money's growing for them, and they got extra money to underwrite programs they never could have underwritten before. And now we're trying to start focusing on churches. We have just written a grant proposal to the Carson Meyer Foundation to see if they wouldn't help us underwrite some programming to do leadership training in churches for this very thing. Because after this pandemic, churches are going to have an awakening when they go back in after this, with the virtual church and the use of their buildings and all this kind of stuff. And, giving in churches have been flatlined for 2 decades anyway. So they're going to have to do some things different. So we thought this would be a great time to use. You've heard my spiel before. I don't believe in fundraising. I believe in giving, and giving is a Christian principle that needs to be retaught in the churches. And this is a great time to stick that flag in the ground and start teaching that premise again to churches, which I think are the bedrock of our community in a lot of examples, and need to be, brought into the fold. And we have some church endowments, mainly because of their cemetery funds that we've gotten over the years, but that needs to be retaught again, I think. And the tax credit can be one of the motivating vehicles in that whole scenario right there.
Yeah, and I think that for those who are interested in creating a fund, contributing to a fund, being involved with the community foundation, ought to contact Tony Watkins and ask him, explain that tax credit thing to me. Yeah. Because it's simple, straightforward. It will reduce your tax liability.
That's right.
Because you're giving it to the community. The last curiosity I have, because I've been in this kind of work a long time, I have my own sense of what the future holds for community foundations. But What do you think's on the horizon? Like, what's going to happen in the next decade as it relates to community foundations beyond simple growth in the corpus, growth in investments, growth in funds? What do you think lies ahead, Harold?
Well, I think that as our government, local, state, federal, are pulling back from helping nonprofits, that we're going to have to, the community foundation has an opportunity to fill that void. And so I foresee that community foundations will continue to grow, particularly when the message gets out to people to include the community foundation in their estate planning, to provide funds for a nonprofit for which they have a passion, or nonprofits if it's more than one, or that they will leave a substantial amount of money for us to put into the endowments to help these nonprofits. So I think we have a very important role to play in replacing government subsidies.
Thank you. Tony, how about you?
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, I think the future is very bright. I think the community foundations will explode because of the donor-advised funds, if nothing else. Just because people like to have some input in where their money goes, and I think Harold's very humble, but as an attorney, he's written a plethora of wills in the Murray-Callaway County area for individuals, and with some encouragement about doing such estate planning as he just described a while ago. That, the unfortunate thing about that is it's very hard to get volunteers for that, to leave an estate. They have to die, in other words, for that to become, real money to you. But, I know for a fact for the Community Foundation of West Kentucky, we've have about $75 million in wills and estate plans that are targeted toward the Community Foundation, that are in the pipeline coming to us somewhere in the future. But, excuse me, those happen at different times on the timeline. There's one individual we know that has about a $30 million estate for us up in Henderson. But, all those are built on one. We've danced around it here the whole time. It's all based on relationships. It's how you build relationships with people in your community and how you build that trust factor. And Harold and them do a very good job of that here in Murray-Callaway County. Our affiliates in other parts of the country, of the area, do a very good job at that as well. But it's a people business. And if we ever take our eye off that ball, if we ever get away, it's a financial transaction or something like that, and get away from people and being about relationships, then we lose. It's about life change and how we can make lives better in our communities and those type of things. I mean, that's why when we started the tax credit, you and I had that discussion. I really thought that the county judge executives, when we passed that in each of these counties, 120 of them in the state of Kentucky, I said, this is going to be the lifeline that each one of those guys need. It went completely over their heads because they're political. They were thinking about how they could make hay out of it, and it frustrated me to no end. The people who got it were the superintendents of schools, of all people, because they were in the trenches fighting with families every day about how to make the quality of life better in those counties. And once we took the politics out of it with these tax credits, and some of these county judges got to see the difference it was making in those communities, their opinions of it changed. That's why we got over Marshall County and did what we did over there. They heard a presentation I made at the governor's conference one time, and they said, well, that's what that tax credit's all about. Yeah, it's not about you. It's about the people in your community. So, I mean, there's still a lot of education to do on those type of things, and we talk to the legislatures every year about giving us more tax credits so we could do more with it. We get a 5-to-1 return on our investment on that. I went and met with Governor Beshear before he went out of office, and I said, thank you for doing that. And, that's one of the few things in government that actually works, so let's do more of it. And so it's like pushing a rock up the hill to get the legislature to believe those type of things. But they're coming around slowly, and Harold is right. When they pull back for their resources, as you teach in your seminars, that doesn't mean that the needs go away. The needs grow. We need more of their assistance. So there's only one thing that can stand in that gap, and that's philanthropy. which I'm thankful for because it's job security for us type of thing. But it also means we got to educate better. We've got to educate the public better.
Harold?
On that point, I want to point out that our board's voluntary. So we all donate our time.
Yeah.
Of course you
But
do.
we're very fortunate to have Tony. I can't give enough credit to Tony. Tony has taken this Community Foundation of West Kentucky, which was a very small entity when he took over. And his vision has been so broad that he's now got affiliates. And I get to have the pleasure of sitting on his board and to hear them discuss. They're talking in millions, and we're talking in tens and thousands of dollars. But for them, they've got the expertise, they've got the computer software, and they take care of all the administrative end of it. So it's a wonderful partnership for the Murray-Callaway County Community Foundation to be affiliated with Community Foundation of West Kentucky, and we're all very fortunate in this region to have Tony Watkins in our community. He's well known statewide, but he is very well known in our communities now, and he brings a lot of credibility to the Community Foundation.
Well, I want to thank both of you very much for being part of this program this evening, and the passion and energy, the examples and the details really help tell the story about what the community foundations are and what they will be in the future. Maybe a closing lesson, because I'm still sort of a professor. I think that the message to our political partners is more an expression of appreciation. Thanks to those in leadership roles in government for managing the effective processes of changing public policy. Establishing the tax credit as an example of what that Tony talked about. There's other opportunities coming where that partnership with government will be realized because it'll be needed. What that's based on is that 80% or more of all of the money that goes to support the nonprofit sector, all 30 categories of nonprofits, all types of programs and services offered, over 80% of that money comes from individual donors. Whether they're giving it to an endowment fund at a community foundation or an annual fund request to the nonprofit directly. But if you think about that it's still in the hands of the people. It's still us making decisions about what we're committed to, what we care about, and where we put our money. And as a former grant maker, I can tell you that when a grant-making foundation is looking at a nonprofit's request for funding, the first thing they look at is their financial statements. And if a majority of their annual operating budget comes from individual donors, we know they're healthy. We know they're financially secure because they've got people committed to them, as Tony and Harold have talked about. If they're dependent on government grant funding or private philanthropy or corporate sponsorships, we also know those are at the risk of change, of reduced revenue from the business side, change in interest or emphasis from the government side. But individual donations tend to be those that are locked into the heart, and people are committed to your mission and will continue to give to you, and ultimately maybe leave a legacy gift in the form of a bequest. So the time tonight, I hope, was well spent in talking about what a community foundation can do and the role it plays in helping all of us become philanthropists. So I want to thank you again. Aaron, congratulations and good luck with what comes next.
Thank you.
Thank you.